Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a very, very accomplished leader from Florida, USA, Pandit Dasa. Pandit, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Pandit is a former monk. He's a mindfulness expert. He's an author. And all of you know I'm very partial to authors. And he's a speaker. So let's start with talking about mindfulness. Let's start with your journey as a monk. Tell me about this journey. What made you become a monk and what made you renounce it?
Renounce the monk order. Yeah. Well, one thing is becoming a monk is nothing I believe anyone ever plans as part of their life. I don't think you'll ask any kid that's 5 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't think anyone's going to say monk. Everyone's going to say something where that brings in a lot of money and fame and success.
Correct.
And so that was also not part of my game plan. So I grew, I was born in India. My parents relocated to the US, to Los Angeles in 1980. The classic immigrant story. They came over with very little money, little to no money. And one of the first things they did was set up a small shop on Venice Beach, California. There's a boardwalk and there's a bunch of people, hundreds of shops just selling gift items. They were working 7 days a week, just trying to put food on the table. And within a matter of about 8 years, they became multimillionaires. Wow. I mean, a lot of hard work, and also a lot of luck and good karma. I think all of that's needed for success. It's not just hard work, because plenty of people work hard and unfortunately they don't have the same kind of a success. So everything was great. We began living the so-called American dream, big house on the hill, pool, jacuzzi, nice cars and everything. But in the early 1990s, my parents' jewelry business, the factory caught on fire. And we ended up losing the business and pretty much lost everything after that. And at that time, my dad decided to explore new business opportunities in post-communist Bulgaria.
Wow.
So to give you an idea what Bulgaria was like, so we wrapped up our life in LA and moved to Bulgaria. Bulgaria at that time, no one spoke English because it had just come out of the USSR. Everything on TV was either in Bulgarian or in Russian. And so my entire social life and life as I'd known came to a screeching halt where I can't even have a conversation with someone. And there was no internet. You got to keep that in mind as well. So when all of my entire life turned upside down and the world as I had known had disappeared in front of my eyes, and my external sort of distractions and activities had disappeared, that was a time I turned inward to really ask myself the question that I think we all ask ourselves when we go through difficulties is, why is this happening to me and what did I do to deserve this? And that made me turn inward, and I started practicing mindfulness, meditation, just to try to stay calm and sane in such a turbulence, upheaval that I had just gone through. That's where it began, the journey on mindfulness, like a deeper journey. And then in 2 years, we moved back to the US because Bulgaria wasn't safe at that time, especially for foreigners, with the government having been turned upside down. We moved to the East Coast. So my parents set up a business in New York City, which I helped them with for a little while. And then in 1999, I decided that I needed to press pause on my life and figure out what I really wanted to do and how I want to live the rest of my life. So I decided that wanted to go deeper and went to a monastery in Mumbai, India. And the idea was to spend just a month living with monks. But I was living with 40 monks. We all slept on a hardwood floor. There was no bunk beds, no cushions, no mattresses, no private rooms. Everybody just slept in open spaces. And we woke up at 4 a.m. We're meditating for several hours a day. And the rest of the day was spent serving one another, serving the community. So it was a life of simplicity, humility, and service. I loved it so much. I ended up spending 6 months in India, came back to the US, moved into a monastery in New York City, which is a very unlikely place to have a monastery, but New York City, for those who've been there, know that there's everything that you want in New York City. And so I thought I'd spend maybe another 6 months in the monastery in New York, ended up spending 15 years living as a monk. And during that time, I did a lot of speaking on mindfulness and stress management, work-life balance, to college students at Columbia University, New York University, and traveled around the country speaking on college campuses. And then about 8 years ago, I just felt the need to take these messages to a broader audience, to the corporate world and globally. And so I left the monastic life and have been speaking in organizations around the globe for the last about 8 years or so.
Fantastic. So, you know, I've been, when I was reading about you, and most of my questions will be what I've read about you. You say self-care is not selfish. Help me understand this with an example, because generally the moment you bring the I into it, it is assumed to be selfish.
So I think a lot of people do feel that if we aren't constantly giving to others or aren't constantly pursuing our careers, then I'm being selfish. But you see, the airline industry tells us when you get on an airplane, put your own oxygen mask on first before helping even your child. Because if you lose consciousness in those couple of seconds, you can't help anyone. You're no good to anyone. And the same thing applies for us in our lives. If we're not properly oxygenated, that means mentally, emotionally, physically healthy and nourished, how are we going to be able to be there for our family? How can we meet their demands? How can we meet the demands of our corporate life, of our colleagues, the demanding projects, right? The deadlines, the timelines, all of these things. We will be so depleted. And if your work involves dealing with clients and you're showing up not refreshed and not healthy, you think your client's really going to trust you with their business and their money? No. So, and I really want people to understand that we need to take the guilt out of self-care. Like if I need a little more sleep, I shouldn't feel guilty about it. If I need to take some time to just take a walk and not have anyone bother me and turn off my phone for an hour, I shouldn't feel guilty about it. If I need to take a little break or a vacation, we have to realize if I don't keep putting fuel in the tank, my car is going to stop. If I don't take time out to charge this, I'm not communicating with anyone.
Well said.
So I'm also a vehicle that needs charging, that needs fuel, that needs energy. And if I'm not replenishing that on a regular basis, that's actually irresponsible behavior towards my own self.
Well said. Well said. So, you know, one of the other things before I go further is there's a lot of talk that is going on about mindfulness. For my viewers and listeners, tell us, what is the meaning of mindfulness?
So there's, I think, quite a few meanings, but one that I like is being able to bring your thoughts and emotions under control. And being more in the present moment, because our mind has a tendency to be constantly distracted. It's either thinking about the past, the argument that I had, replaying old arguments, remembering the negative things from the past, or, oh, if I would have done it differently, it could have happened like this, or I wish I would have done this and I would have been in a different place in my life. Regrets, negativity, stuck in the past, or worrying about the future, and coming up with worst case scenarios about the future. Oh, if I don't get this job, I'm going to lose my house and I'm going to lose my relationships. Oh, but what if this doesn't happen and this doesn't happen? It's just complete craziness what our mind does and how much energy we waste planning or worrying about. Planning is good. Preparing is good. But worrying about stuff that we have no knowledge of. So bringing our mind into the present moment and just remaining in touch with how we're doing right now. So I feel like that is a key definition, a key component.
Great definition. That's a great definition.
Being mindful and in the present moment and not being just carried away constantly.
Very interesting. My next question is that, you know, we also talk about resilience. So my question is, how can we become more resilient by better managing our emotional, mental, and physical health?
So, you know, resilience, if you have like a spring, right? A spring, and you put it together and you let it go and it springs back, right? So that's resiliency. So that means sometimes life will squeeze us And are we able to spring back, come back, maybe not to full strength, but come back, get back on our feet? That's resilience.
Okay.
And that means for resilience to build and develop within ourselves, we have to go through difficult and painful situations.
Right.
And when we are going through them, it's important to remind ourselves that we're going through them so because it's going to strengthen me for life's next challenge that's already waiting for me. So how else do we learn to bounce back? If the spring is never squeezed, it's never bouncing back. And the more you squeeze, the more it goes.
Correct.
So we have the opportunity when life is squeezing us, not giving us everything we want, as soon as we want, when we want, and how we want. We have to remind ourselves, we are actually going through a growth process. This is building my mental strength. It's building my emotional strength because there's some amazing challenges waiting for me. And in order for me to succeed in those challenges, I have to go through what I'm going through right now, even if it's painful and difficult, because we do have the potential to just become bitter about the negative thing. And if we just become bitter, that means we're not developing resiliency. Because then we're just not learning from that. We're not growing from that. And of course, it does take months or years to realize the lessons that we've learned from the painful thing that happened. Like Steve Jobs says that you can only connect the dots when you look back at your life. You can't connect the dots looking forward.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a huge part of being resilient, is knowing in the moment, if possible, and not to just blame people or the situation or blame myself, all of that. Like, okay, I'm going through what I'm going through. It's painful. It's not comfortable, but it's helping me grow in ways that I can't even plan to grow in that way.
Well said. So moving on, you also have done a lot of research on sleep and how to improve the quality of one's sleep. Tell me a little bit about this research.
So the research that's out there on sleep, there's a lot of it. And I think at least I've seen it in corporate America, and it may be the case in other parts of the world. People like to brag about the fact that they didn't sleep enough. Tell their colleagues, I only slept 4 hours last night. I only slept 2 hours last night. And look, I'm still going. Like, that's something to be proud of. It actually sets a horrible example. First of all, you're destroying your body and your mind, and you're setting a bad example for the rest of the corporate culture. Because now everybody, especially if you're in a leadership role, that means you're basically subtly telling everyone that you guys are sleeping too much and you shouldn't sleep as much so that you can do more work, right? It's just like leads to burnout. So some of the research that comes from Johns Hopkins Medicine, Dr. Patrick Feenan, he explains that a lack of sleep, like on a regular basis, can impact your mood, your memory, your health, and your judgment. Now, who are we without proper mood, memory, health, and judgment? I know if I don't sleep well, I'm pretty irritable and just like can't focus so well. And the research also shows that if we're not sleeping properly, it gradually starts to impact our physical health. It increases our chances of developing obesity by almost 50%.
Wow.
It increases our chances of developing colorectal cancer by about 40%. And also increases our chances of developing type 2 diabetes and increases our chances of developing dementia by 33%. That's directly your mind's ability to function. Once that kicks in, you can't really function properly like a normal person anymore. Like, it's over, game over. So that's what, when we're young, we don't realize it. We don't feel it. We think we can push through. But, any vehicle that you abuse will let you know at some point that, it's going to run out. It's going to break down on you at the wrong time. When you're driving from one town to another and there's nothing in between, that's where it's going to break down. Amazing. And then you'll be like, oh my gosh, why did I do that?
Amazing. Great response. My next question to you is on relationships. You say also that it's important to maintain positive relationships. But if we don't, what is the impact on us?
Well, there was an article in the Harvard Business Review that explain that positive social connections at work, they're talking about work, but it applies to everywhere.
Correct.
If there are positive social connections at work, people are less depressed. They learn faster, they remember longer. They don't get sick as much, and they perform better on the job. So the flip side is, if we don't have positive relationships, then we'll experience more depression.
Correct.
Because as human beings, we're social creatures. Even animals are social creatures for the most part. You know, they travel in herds and tribes, most of them. And we do too. And if we don't, and then it's because it's work-related research, because half of our waking time is at work. We spend half of our waking time at work with colleagues doing work-related things. So if we're not having proper relationships, positive relationships, where we're actually caring for one another, seeing how the other is doing, then when we need that help, no one's going to be reaching out to us to see how we're doing. No one's going to care about us. So we get back in life what we put out. So relationships are something that require investment of our time and emotional energy, whether it's work or personal life. And the more we put out, the more we're going to get back. Of course, there will always be people who don't reciprocate with that. Then we know that that's not where we want to put our energy. But there are plenty of people who will reciprocate. And we need to actively find those individuals and put our energy there, because we also get satisfaction in serving them. And then we'll get that reciprocation back. And generally, we will be happier. And when we are happier, our immune system works better. Our mental health is better.
Well said. Well said. My next question to you is, in the beginning, you spoke a little bit that you'd give talks on work-life balance. And that seems to be a challenge for almost everybody in the world. Yet in today's world of multitasking and high-stress work, what is the need to develop me time? Something like a personal hobby or something like a personal passion to nourish ourselves?
Well, it's a great question. And one thing is, or the research shows that a human being actually cannot multitask. The brain is not capable of doing two things at once. Otherwise, we would have no problem texting and driving.
Correct.
But the fact that we're all crashing our cars and killing ourselves because we need to send that text tells us our brain can actually focus only on one thing. We switch tasks and we can't do two things at once. Like if I'm speaking, then it's hard to hear. And if I'm just listening to you, but I'm formulating a response while you're talking, I'm not even listening to you really anymore. I'm too busy formulating a response. So that's really important to understand, that we actually can't multitask. But it is absolutely crucial and vital that we are finding me time. Because when our mind gets cluttered, we can't think with clarity. We just can't. It's like when you're stuck in traffic, is there any progress being made? No. Or it's frustrating progress. So when there's too much traffic up here, your thoughts, creativity can't really happen with a cluttered mind. You can't be productive with a cluttered mind. So we need to close out the apps, as I like to say it, not the apps in here, but the apps up here. If we clear out the apps, then we're clearing out the traffic jam. And that is helping us relax and calm our engine down, right? That's us recharging our battery. And it is absolutely crucial. And if that means we need to find hobbies, things that nourish us. Maybe it's going for a walk. Maybe it's playing with your dog. Maybe it's playing with your kids. Maybe it's riding a horse. Maybe it's singing or dancing or painting. It's crucial that we find things. Maybe it's just spending time with people. Maybe that's how you get your nourishment. I think it's so crucial and important that we do, again, self-care is not selfish. A little focus on myself just means I'll be able to give to everyone else much better.
Well said. Now let's move to your books. You've written several books. Tell me a little bit about your books.
So my first book, it was while I was still living as a monk. It's called Urban Monk, Exploring Karma, Consciousness, and the Divine. It's, so many people when I was living in New York were asking me, why'd you become a monk? How'd you become a monk? So eventually, after answering that question like 100 times, I finally decided to write a book about it. So I gave a brief summary of how I became a monk at the beginning of this interview. So the book goes into, it takes a deep dive into my life in LA, or actually also growing up in India, what that was like, living in LA, that when I became a monk, what that was like, the mindset and the challenges I went through as a monk. And what I did as a monk. So just a deep detail. If somebody wants to know why someone becomes a monk after coming to America, like that's not why you come to the US.
Yep.
Especially because people go to India for their spirituality.
Correct.
Here I am leaving that behind, coming here and then becoming a monk, just the opposite, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it just gives you a deep dive into the life of somebody, who decided to become a monk and what I did as a monk. And then the second book I wrote during the pandemic, it's a follow-up tool, which is called Closing the Apps, How to Be Mindful at Work and at Home.
Okay.
Because I do these talks in corporations on mindful leadership, mindfulness at work. So I needed to be able to give some folks, give people a follow-up tool, a guide, a practical resource on how to practice mindfulness with your colleagues at work or at home. So that book is filled with practical tips on how to practice mindfulness in the middle of a busy workday or at home. So those are my two books.
Fascinating. And are these books available? They're available on Amazon?
They're both available on Amazon. So that's where they can be found. Okay.
So I'm going to look for them, and I'll ask all our viewers and listeners to check them out on Amazon. So time for two more questions. I'm going to ask you this one, as a former monk, who or what inspires you to keep doing so many different things?
You mean in terms of my speaking?
Speaking, in terms of writing, in terms of, being a monk, deciding to become a monk, then renouncing the order. I mean, there are so many different things that you seem to be doing. Where do you keep drawing your inspiration from?
Well, I mean, there are definitely, I've had some and continue to have several mentors, a couple of friends who guided me when I was a monk. They're still monks. And so they've been a huge source of inspiration for me to keep moving forward. But also the messages that I talk about, I notice that they really help people on a personal level and also a professional level. And when I see that what I'm doing is actually genuinely helping people change their life, help them be a better human being and be a more productive human being, that is just so satisfying, being able to go to sleep at night knowing that I helped a few hundred people from this seminar, from this lecture, from this workshop. Just knowing that you're making a positive contribution to the world in a meaningful way that's impacting people on the inside, that is enough inspiration to sort of keep going. And even as a monk, I was teaching the same type of things as a monk, I was doing it in a more spiritual way. Now my messages are very secular because it's in the corporate environment. But the message, the foundation of the messages are the same. I remember when I was a monk, one student from Columbia University, when they were graduating, they came to me and said, my best highlight of my entire time at Columbia University was coming to your programs. And I was like, oh my gosh, this person's at an Ivy League college, and this is their takeaway, big takeaway was that programs, the meditation that they came to. So I think the inspiration comes from the people that have guided me, and also just the good that I'm able to do in some small capacity for the world and for the people and in their lives, their professional and personal lives.
Amazing. My last question to you, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. What would you like, or what would be 3 lessons you would like our viewers and listeners to take away from our conversation?
Well, one was the one we talked about right in the beginning, right? Self-care is not selfish.
Yeah.
Please, please, please take care of your physical, mental, and emotional health, especially the mental and emotional part. Very, very important. Without that, we can't do much in life. So don't feel guilty. If you need to talk to a professional about your mental health, there should not be a stigma around it. I know there is, but there shouldn't be. If we're not embarrassed to go to a dentist for a toothache, we shouldn't be embarrassed to go to a professional for our mental health. It's our body, it's our mind, we need to take care of it.
Correct.
The second thing is, as my life has indicated, nothing in life is permanent.
Okay.
Right? That is very important. So if you're going through a difficult time right now, it's not permanent. It will end. The world was not created for permanence. it was created with it's very everything is temporary. Everything has a time limit, has an expiration date, including us. So if we're going through something, know that it will pass, right? So, and the final thing is that really, however busy we are, let's find time to practice some mindfulness, practice some meditation. It is the way we can nourish our mind and our body. And it's not, doesn't have to be done in a spiritual way if that's not your thing. It can be done in a secular way through breathing exercises, also called pranayama, because research shows that deep breathing exercises actually reduce stress and calm our emotions. And we can all use a little bit of that. So take 1 or 2 minutes a few times a day. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 20 minutes. Take 2 minutes, take 10 deep breaths, take a moment to feel grateful for something in your life, and do that a few times in a day.
Yeah.
Just, it would take a minute or two to do that a few times a day. You de-stress, refresh your mind, and keep going. So take time to do that spiritually or in a secular way, but you owe it to yourself to nourish yourself.
Amazing. Self-care is not selfish. Nothing is permanent. This too shall pass, or as they say in Hindi, ye bhi guzar jayega. And find time to practice mindfulness. On that note, Pandit, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for speaking to me about your incredible journey. I mean, not only is the journey incredible, but it is, it's inspiring to think of all the stuff that you have done and you are continuing to do. Thank you for talking to me about what seems to be your motto, which is self-care is not selfish. Thank you for speaking to me about your books and for all the wonderful lessons you've given to each one of us. Thank you again and good luck.
Ashutosh, thank you so much for having me on your show. It was wonderful speaking with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.